All right, today we're talking with a retired serial entrepreneur who was overwhelmed by his business. It was a growing business, but he discovered a better way that led to a much happier life. His name is Adam Pontrelli. I'll tell you more about him in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I am the host of this show, and you know every week we have smart entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs from all kinds of companies and organizations. We've had Netflix and Grubhub and Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard. Lots of great episodes for you to check out in the archive. So be sure to go check that out on your podcasting app of choice. And before we get into this interview, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. And my guest, Adam Pontrelli, here today does an amazing job of that, of delivering value to other people in his network. And so that's what I love about what we get to do, helping other businesses to run a podcast to deliver value to the people in their network. We are the easy button for companies to launch and run a podcast. And so if you want to learn more about how we do it, the three things are strategy, accountability, and full execution. Go to rise25.com and you can learn more about what we do. You can also email our team at support@rise25.com. All right, my guest today is Adam Pontrelli. He is a professional EOS implementer today, retired serial entrepreneur. He's been in this role doing EOS since 2023, coaching and facilitating leadership teams, help them to improve their business. And he is also the founder, owner, and CEO at AP World Marketing. It's a company that he started way back in the early 2000s to provide strategic consultation and has developed partnerships with a number of major retailers, including Costco and Walmart and Target, Amazon, that sort of thing. He's also been very actively involved in Entrepreneurs Organization in Los Angeles, which is how he and I met at an EOLA chapter retreat. And so I'm excited to hear his story, especially about growing up in a family business. So Adam, you said that you were actually a fourth generation entrepreneur, which is incredible. So going back to, I guess, great grandfather, what was that great grandfather doing back then? Entrepreneurial. What was he running? Or great grandmother?
Textile. He was in the textile business.
Okay, textile business. Okay, all right. And then his progeny start a metal business, a scrap metal business in Los Angeles.
I was actually the other side of my family, was in the scrap metal business. Originally started in Youngstown, Ohio, and then made his way out to the West Coast in Los Angeles and got into the scrap metal business.
And so you grew up around entrepreneurs. What was that experience like as a kid? Was it just kind of normalized, just used to people working for themselves?
Yeah, I often think back how fortunate I am that I didn't have a dad that was cracking his second beer at noon, and that I what was normal to me was you got up, you worked hard, you came home late, you were tired, and you just kept going on and on. And I can still hear so many of my grandfather's lessons throughout my life. In fact, he repeated them over and over again, and things like one step forward, like two steps forward, one step back, just keep going. It's about perseverance. Keep going.
Were you like 3 years old, 4 years old, running around in the scrap metal yard?
I'm sure I visited back then, don't have many memories, but I do have memories of like 5, 6, 7, going down there, spending time around there and seeing what that was all about.
That sounds amazing. I mean, I know my kids, if their grandparents had a scrap metal yard, I mean, they'd be like, let's go to the scrap metal yard this weekend.
There was definitely some interesting things down there.
Yeah, I would think. And you did lemonade stands as a kid. You also delivered pizzas. So talk a little bit about that, teaching good work ethic for you.
Yeah, I think I always wanted to be productive and always wanted to figure out a way to, be of service and utilize my time. Of course, I was very athletic and got into various different sports and things like that. But, thinking about what I wanted to do when I grew up, it was always had to do with business. Like, what am I going to do with business?
And your parents, they weren't in the scrap metal business, correct? Were they founders of other companies?
My father was an attorney and my mother was a professional, amazing homemaker.
Okay. All right. So the family business, the scrap metal business, actually ends up getting passed down to your uncle. And you, while all the time you were growing up, you thought you were being groomed to go work in this family business, but you had this experience right around the time that you were graduating. Tell us about that.
Yeah, a little bit of a rude awakening, but glad it happened when it did. That's right. My whole life, I thought I was being groomed for that business. I worked there summers and any chance that I could, all the way through college, and graduated college. Geez, 1992, 93, somewhere in there. And just after graduation, I got the phone call from my uncle and said, just didn't feel like there was a future for me. And that kind of began a little bit of soul searching, let's say, that lasted far too long. But in hindsight, rather go through that type of crisis when you're young, so that the rest of your life, whatever you accomplish from there, you can always draw back on that strength and know that you can persevere whatever it comes at you. I will tell you that that period lasted for more than 10 years and certainly went through some ups and downs.
And you tried a lot of different things. You're kind of like trying to find your way during this period of time.
You know what? It almost raises hair on my arms just thinking about how challenging it was. To be honest, growing up and never spending a moment thinking about what you're going to do. Then you graduate from college and you have a blank canvas. There was too many decisions. The ocean was too big.
Mm.
And I really didn't have a place to like point my ship. So yeah, I did cast a wide net.
You sound like that, that character in Shawshank Redemption that gets released, and then he decides to just start a crime just to get thrown back into prison so that he can just deal with it. He knows that system.
If that was a way back then, I probably would have done it. I mean, there were tough days. But yeah, I mean, I took the LSATs. I tried acting classes. I got into the fitness industry. I was like just going in a ton of different directions.
Yeah.
One of the greatest things I did is I just threw a backpack on my shoulders and traveled 25, 30 different countries all around Europe and the Middle East. And I thought that was a really valuable experience. So
Yeah.
yeah, when you look back in hindsight, all that stuff just colors who you are today.
Eventually, you find your way, and you found this business in the early 2000s. You're the founder of it, AP World Marketing. What was the vision behind that?
So I got started in that business. I knew someone. Fortunately, it's like this whole concept of it's like who, not how, and it's who you know and not what you know. But I was young. I was opinionated. It was just, I'm probably still like that today, where I didn't really listen to everyone. But when I did find someone, and this is, I can look back and throughout my entire life, when I found people that interests me or interested me, I really put a lot of effort and energy into it. So I knew someone who had a business that was selling Costco since it had one store. And
When you say that selling Costco, what do you mean by that?
so he, how do I say this succinctly? He was technically a manufacturer's representative.
So he'd represent a manufacturer who had a product that wanted to sell that product to
Right, right,
Costco in wholesale.
right.
Okay,
But
okay.
I would say he was very specialized in that he was extraordinarily successive. He was smart. He was aggressive. Um, when I met him, he was wearing his flip-flops, wearing shorts, had a legal pad and a telephone in his kitchen, and the guy was making a fantastic living. And
In fairness, that it was Los Angeles, and there are a lot of
that's
people
right.
dressed like that.
That's
So
right.
yeah, I'm from LA, so I can say that.
Yeah. So I think he was looking for a little bit of an assistant. That's how I met him. It didn't jive, but he and I became good friends. We ended up spending a lot of time together. And then after a course of a few years, I was in between jobs and he just said, "You want to give this a go?" And then boom, we like flipped the switch. And from then on out, it was like 100 miles an hour. I found myself in China. And then a week later, I'm like at a trade show and then going to visit Costco. Then we're down in South America. I mean, it just never stopped. It was like 7 days a week. And 2 years of that, he looked at me and he said, if you can't make $1 million a year doing this on your own, then you ain't shit. I'll never forget those words. And I kind of looked at him and I thought, okay, I guess this is it. And he kicked me out of the nest and there we go.
How
So,
was that being kicked out of the nest different from your uncle kicking you out of the family nest?
well, I think, obviously it was a little scary at first, but I think if we think back, what is getting kicked out of the nest? The mother, the parent knows you can fly, kicks you out, and you start falling, and then all of a sudden you spread your wings and you start flying, and that's exactly what happened. I, like most entrepreneurs, uh, was good at something, got into the business, continued to be good at it, but then when you start trying to scale it and grow it, you realize you're not great at doing everything, and running a business was one of them.
What were you good at?
I was good at building relationships, being really accountable. And if, let's say you and I are working together, I'm going to try to do as much of your job as possible so that when we talk, doing business with me is really easy.
I mean, the bottom line is for a company that's selling a manufacturer, or whatever, producing a product and wants to get into Costco, wants to get into Target or whatever. The bottom line is, do you help them get in or not? And that you were good at that.
Exactly. So if you're
Yeah.
the buyer, let's say at Costco or any one of the other major retailers, and there's like 10 steps, hypothetically, like I'm going to do eight of them, even though it's a lot of work, I'm going to do eight of them before I even pick up the phone or call you or send you an email.
Yeah.
So that when I do call, when I do send you an email, you're interested in what I have to say.
So
Makes your job easy.
you get kicked out of the nest, so to speak, and you start this business around 2003, which was not too long after the dot-com meltdown, after 9/11. In retrospect, was it a good time to start the business, a bad time, a hard time, or none of the above?
One of my favorite marks in time was about 2008 and 2009 when we were going through that mortgage crisis.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget getting a call from my mother, and she said, "How you doing?" I'm usually pretty short on the phone with her during the day, and I said, "Mom," in that tone, "Mom, someone out there is making a fortune. I know a lot of people are hurting right now, and it's understandably what's going on in the economy, but someone's making a fortune." And I always look back on that call because 2008, 2009, 2010 was like, yes, I had, starting from a relatively small number, we had those double, triple digit years, year after year after year. But then when I hit 2008 and 2009, that's when I just doubled down and I went from selling Costco to everyone else. And I just, I pick up the phone and call and introduce myself and say, "I'm a Costco guy. What does that mean to you?" Costco's one of the hardest people to do business with. They've got the lowest margins out there, which means you got to be near
If I can
perfect.
succeed there, then I can certainly succeed in others. Yeah.
Yeah, which means
Yeah.
in my bag of tricks, I've got some of the industry's leaders because you
Mm.
can't be successful unless you're near perfect if you're selling Costco. So that got everybody's interested. And those are the 3, 5 years that I really expanded my business because I I was confident in what I could do. I was confident in who I represented, and we
Yeah.
went.
You said you were not great at running the business, though. And was there a breaking point at which you realized that you needed some help, or you needed a community, or you needed something to support you?
Yeah, there was. I was fortunate. Three of the vendors I represented, maybe six of the vendors were in these peer groups. So I had two in YPO, two were in Vistage, and one of them was in EO. And everybody kept telling me about it. The one I was closest to was in YPO, and I said, "Hey, you heard of EPO? Yes, I mean EO, yes, of course." And I said, "Well, I don't have 50 employees or whatever the requirements were for YPO. What do you think about EO?" And again, I'll never forget his words. He said, "No question." So again, I dove in. Took me a couple of years to join. I just thought I was too busy. I was always traveling, uh, what have you. It was just way too busy. I didn't think I was going to make the time for it. But I finally joined. At the end of a year, I looked back and I was a better leader, a better manager, a better partner, a better friend. I was making more money and I was working less hours.
Mm.
So from that point, I was fortunate enough to be asked to join the board. And now I
And
look
you've been
back.
on the board pretty much every year since then for the last
Almost
12,
every,
15.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done most positions on the board, including leading the chapter of nearly 200 entrepreneurs as president coming out of COVID in 21, 22.
How was
And
that leading a organization of 200 entrepreneurs coming out of COVID, all the uncertainty, all the craziness, the chaos of that period of time? What was that like?
I mean, I can't say enough about about EO. It's you know, being third generation Angelino, there's really no shortage of contacts and resources. And yes, I have friends that are successful business owners, but the framework, the ethos of EO to help each other learn and grow, just tremendous. I can easily say that some of my closest friends around the world are through this organization's time and time again. This organization has been there for me and helped me be where I am today.
What was how did the pandemic if you take us back to like March of 2020, how did the pandemic affect your business? Where, did you have an oh shit moment? Did you have a oh God, I don't know what's gonna happen? Am I gonna lose everything kind of moment? Or, what were you
Well,
thinking in that at that time?
I mean, honestly, some businesses got really, really hurt, and some of them really succeeded. So one of my biggest categories was in the home furnishing business, and guess what everybody was doing when they couldn't leave their house?
Furnishing their house. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
real problem. I mean, I had some pretty big years
Mm.
uh, during that time.
Yeah. Do you, in retrospect, do you have mixed emotions towards that? I've interviewed many people who say, kind of with like feeling a little guilty, like, actually, the pandemic was really good for me.
It was good for me. I got a chance to step off the treadmill for the first time in a long time and really got a chance to take inventory of my life. And in the EOS terms, we call it a clarity break. And I realized more and more how important that is. Just stop and pause and like you're in charge of steering the ship. And when
Yeah.
you're in the forest and can't see through the trees and you're just busy doing, you don't get a chance to really calibrate. And you and everybody else who you're leading counts on you for doing that.
And how did you do that? Did you go away? Did you go out of town? Did you go on vacation?
Well, during COVID, we were spending a lot of time at home.
Yeah.
Really, I went from flying 100,000 miles a year to not flying at all. And I thought, wow,
Wow.
I really detest traveling. I mean, I've done so much of it.
Yeah.
So I just started thinking about what else I can do. And then having all this time at home, you remember we were
Yeah.
well, I don't know, you were probably in EO at the time, but
I
anyway,
will. Yeah.
our chapter just rallied together, the resources
Yep.
rallied together,
Yeah.
everybody was there, the needs and the leads. We had a great president at the time that really provided a lot of framework and
Oh,
resources
yeah.
for us. Mitch Langstein, he was fantastic. Um,
It was really I think, a case study in how an organization can rally around their members and support their members. It was really, really inspiring. So this leads you then to kind of your next chapter. Well, first of all, when did you discover this book, Traction, and when did you implement it in your company? And for those who don't know what it is, kind of explain what EOS is.
So EOS is a framework. Tools have been around for 100 years. But I think what Gino Wickman did was he pulled from all these great sources and came up with a really eloquent, easiest. That's the reputation that is in the going circles as easiest to implement. So I found out about EOS through EO. It was a common thread amongst excelling businesses. I had to find out more. I had forum mates read the book. I was, all the reports month after month, people are telling me how things are progressing, how much more productive they were. I watched one of them have a nine-figure exit within a year. I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know if we can attribute that to the EOS, but he was he dove into it pretty hard. Um, yeah, I'm not sure I answered your
So
question.
you implement it though in your business, and you see
Right,
you see a
right.
shift. You see a shift.
Yeah, it was a similar thing to joining EO. I read the book probably two or three times, then started adopting some of the tools. And yes, they all helped, but it wasn't anything like hiring an implementer. Once I did that, and there was like a strict process for exactly how you go from point A to point B, then I saw firsthand what it could do. I got all the right people in the right seats that can do the things that they love to do much better than I could most likely micromanage them.
Yeah.
And then the business started running itself, and I got moved into the owner's box, and it was like a salvation for me. And
Mm.
so I started to spend a lot of time. What am I going to do? What else am I going to do? And in joining EO, you get so much from that organization. Eventually, you start giving back. New members come in, you start moderating, facilitating, mentoring, coaching newer members. And people always tell you that mentoring, you get more out of it than your mentee. You don't really understand that until you start mentoring. And I realized how much I enjoyed that. So in talking to the other EOS implementers that I had known for years, and they all would look at me and say, "Hey, you'd be great at it. You'd be great at it. You should do it." And I'll never forget the last lunch I had with someone who recently made the switch, and he just said, "Just do it." And I was like, "All right." I came home, made the call, signed up, and the rest was history.
I have a question about this because I've always been curious about this because most of the people that get the biggest, most of the entrepreneurs that I interview, that I talk to, that get the biggest impact from implementing EOS are visionaries. And a visionary is someone who has great ideas, but not great at follow through, not great at putting operations in place. But then they go and become an implementer, and it's almost like they have to switch to the thing that they are weakest at. That's what I don't get about being an implementer. And yet I see it happen so often. So what do you say to that? Because the implementer they're literally coming in, they're helping other visionaries who are like them and helping them to put systems and processes in place. So I'm just curious how you're able to make that switch.
It's a really interesting perspective, John. I think the skill sets are a little bit different. I think you teach the tools and don't teach reliance on the implementer. Like I'm not getting in and creating dependence on me. I'm creating it. I'm teaching the tools. So we are a teacher, facilitator, and coach. We teach the tools, we facilitate the sessions, and we coach them on their journey. A little
You
bit
get
more.
in, you get out. You don't have to be
Yeah,
there forever. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Some keep us around forever, but
Yeah.
that's like
It's not designed that way. Yeah.
that's like going to the gym and saying, "Hey, I have an hour here. How am I going to get best use of my time today?" That's what I
Yeah.
want. So
Yeah.
those are the people that keep us around for a long time. But getting back to your question, the nuances come from, I'd say in the first couple of years, it was really wanting to deliver great sessions, and then after a while, and you're so much better with the material. Then it's about the nuances of reading the room. And then you start playing with neuroscience and saying, "Hey, where is everybody's capacity? How can I shift that so I can get more out of the sessions that I teach them?" And that's just the next step. So being a visionary versus an integrator, I don't know anybody, by the way, and could be a separate topic. I don't know anybody, by the way, that goes right to visionary. I think somehow people are either born to be visionaries, but if you're lucky enough to jump into that role and it works, great. I think I had a tough time understanding that dynamic, and once I had an integrator, then you know the sky's the limit. It was just
Yeah.
fantastic. But I look back on the person that I worked with, getting into the business selling Costco. And for all intents and purposes, I was his integrator.
Mm. Oh, yeah,
Anyway,
that's true. Yeah. So maybe you are a bit ambidextrous in that sense.
oh, I'm definitely a visionary. Not definitely.
Okay. Okay.
Not
Okay.
definitely. But
Okay.
when I find the right visionary, I mean, I will do everything for that
So then
person.
if you're a definite visionary, but you say that you were in the integrator role for the guy that you got the job with in the late 90s,
Yep.
selling into Costco, then is that why he ultimately let you go? Is because he realized that you weren't sitting in the right seat?
Well, hopefully he realized some potential and knew there was more for me out there and knew that I was never going to be satisfied until I did
But
that.
you
So I
realize
would
it. You also realize it about yourself that was not the right seat for me. Yeah.
listen, if and he and I could have done far more together, then we probably would have.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious. So you had, these foundational experiences from closely held small, private businesses, a family business where the uncle lets you go, and then this relationship with this guy who then lets you fly the nest. How much did those experiences shape your passion for what you do with EOS now and helping other businesses to have a more orderly process behind basically running their business so you don't have these like sudden unexpected exits that were so foundational in your life experience?
Yeah, what shaped my passion? I think that's an easy question. Um, Number one, probably all the struggles that I had growing up and in my business. I think people often look at entrepreneurs and think, "Oh, well, they work for themselves," and how
It's all
great is that?
easy. Yeah, yeah.
And I don't think people realize what's behind the curtain. And in fact, I don't think many entrepreneurs realize they're not getting paid enough for how much time they spend on the business or spend worrying about the business or all those sleepless nights.
Yep.
I think people look at your successes and say, oh, well, that person is set. What they
Yeah.
don't realize is how many nights they spent sleepless
Yep.
thinking this might be the end of it. It might be over. Like, how am I going to get myself out of this?
Yep. Yep.
So that really fuels my passion. All the friendships that I've made by, with just not just like-minded, but like-valued people and really rallying together to share resources, sharing common problems to common solutions, and not feeling so isolated. I really built this band of brotherhood in EO, and that has really shaped. When we talk about our issues and we talk about like the things that are plaguing us, we have that whole ethos, and we have that whole,
Yeah.
Gestalt protocol. I know it's a little older language now in EO, but we don't offer advice. We just share experiences because we're really there to help each other.
Yeah, yeah. Adam, this has been great. Where, actually, before I wrap up, I want to ask about, I'm a big fan of gratitude. I'm a big fan of giving our guests a little bit of space here at the end to express gratitude to anyone who's helped them in their journey, especially peers or contemporaries. Anyone in particular you'd want to shout out and acknowledge?
Ooh, loaded question, John. I would easily run out of time if I named everyone, but when we're talking about EO and that ethos, I always remember the first event I ever went to. I met a gentleman by the name of Gary Gorin, and he just came right up to me. I was standing by myself, and he said, "Hey, I've never met you before. My name's Gary Gorin. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Why'd you join EO? Tell me about your business." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Answer the question. And immediately he said, you should meet this person, you should meet that person. And by the way, I've been in EO for X amount of years. If you ever need anything along your journey, feel free to reach out. And I just thought that was like such a warm welcome that I immediately adopted that to the next generation of people coming in. And I've never stopped. And that was just such a nice thing for me.
That's
So
really
I'll give
cool.
a shout out to Gary Gorin for that.
Gary Gorin. Good job, Gary. Well, this has been great. Where can people go to learn more about you and connect with you, Adam?
My business, Apex Coaching. You go to apexla.com. You can find me there or on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Adam, thanks so much.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.